All right, I'd like to thank everybody for coming today, those of you who are here in person and those who are joining us virtually. So what we'd like to do is a very short overview of where things started from in terms of trying to develop an alliance or an affinity group of people who are involved in NCI-Designated Cancer Center shared resources or managing them, so that we can try to share our knowledge, our experiences, and try to really help each other. So we have 3 short presentations, and then we're going to spend most of the time just opening it up really for discussion amongst ourselves here, as well as those who are joining virtually. So we're going to start out with Gordon Roble trying to not trying, but will tell you about, he can try, but he's going to talk about the Shared Resource Management Affinity Group that was set up a little over a year ago, I believe. So, Gordon.
Those who know me, and I see a number of them out there, know that I will try. So I'm not sure how we advance. Sorry, am I missing a button here? Here we go. Oh, yeah. Excellent. Welcome. It's great to see a number of familiar faces, folks I've seen in person, and then also through this affinity group as a very small box over the last couple of years. But what I'm starting out with this is really just talk a little bit of history and then allow the rest of the speakers to bring us up into the next many years, hopefully. But what this started as is when we did our CCSG renewal a year ago now. It was the week after ABRF, and so, or the week of ABRF, in fact. But about 2 years ago, when we were really in our planning stages, and I think many of you have written the shared resources management sections now, it was really, really new, and while we had great guidance that we had borrowed from folks, there's no true overarching cohesion to what we were doing. And one of the things that we looked to do was to figure out, can we start to talk to folks as to how best to work on the shared resources management section. And what we did is we kind of reached out and found a number of folks who were willing to be on a really ill-defined charter committee for this process, and would like to thank all of them, definitely including my partner in crime, Cassie Sather, who's our, I think, Associate Operations Director at Fred Hutch, and I apologize, I didn't introduce myself. So I'll step back a second. I'm Gordon Roble. I'm our Deputy Associate Director of Shared Resources for the Fred Hutch, Seattle Children's, and University of Washington Cancer Consortium, as well as the AVP for Fred Hutch's Shared Resources. But I also want to just make sure to thank this group with Ed Seho from Moffitt Center, Holly Dressman, who's in the crowd today, from the Lineberger, Heidi Weiss from the Markey Cancer Center, Natalie, who's also here today, as really being willing to work on this. And so, again, this started from the steering committee. It took us a little while to get going. We worked for a few months trying to come up with our plan on this. And again, a big chunk of that was that Cassie and myself were also trying to write our shared resources management section component. And that definitely ate up some time. But we were very, very lucky in that as we started this, we then moved into kind of the conference season that we're in right now. So we had a chance to meet with folks at the ACCA. We presented remotely for the AACR, and then the ABRF meeting last year. And each time we would meet, we would have more and more people come into the room really expressing interest in being part of an affinity group to talk about our shared resources management sections. And so from there, as I said, we had our site visit and kind of slowed down a little bit, but we kicked off with our first affinity group meeting remotely in June of last year, and it was well attended by well over 50 folks and from about 35 cancer centers. And then from there, we've had 3 other full group online meetings, as you can see, in September, November, and January of this year. We were very, very fortunate in that we were able to be part of the recent ACCA meeting. It happened to be out in Seattle, so we were able to host it at Fred Hutch, but we did have a full-day workshop around shared resources management and had some great speakers and conversations during that time. And really where we're going with this is that we've seen great interest, and as others will talk about, we're now looking forward into the future with merging with the East Coast NCI Alliance to really become a national group. And things that we've really seen from the benefit of the collective wisdom of folks looking at shared resources management has been these groups. And as I said, we've really grew very, very fast. But as we've talked about so far, these have really been focused on areas of interest and how are we all handling these components of the shared resources management, and a lot of times just how are we handling these components on our kind of day-to-day existence within shared resources as cancer centers. So we started off and we talked about both our cancer center, the Fred Hutch, and associated consortium members, as well as Ed Sejo talked about the Moffitt Center. And that was really just, hey, what did we both do for our SRM sections, and compared and contrasted those. And since then, we've talked about our oversight processes. So what governance do we have for shared resources? User surveys have been a huge topic of interest. Site visit experiences, because that has obviously been changing for all of us. And those have all been presented over those last meetings I mentioned. But we have a whole list of other things from metrics, budget, shared resource sharing, et cetera, that we're really hoping that we'll continue to get out there. And so I think with that, just knowing that we had these groups, and again, that there was a group sort of more East Coast based that we talked about, I reached out to Nick and said, hey, it's really a great time, I think, for us to be able to start working together and to really take advantage of everybody's, again, collective wisdom and knowledge here. And so with that, I think I'm handing it over to Jay. Excellent.
Where's the advance button?
It's right there. The turn around. Yeah.
This one?
Should be that one.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Gordon, and hello, everyone. My name's Jay Fox, and I'm going to continue on with this odyssey. Everyone knows about cancer-centered shared resources and what they're expected to accomplish, and you can see, at least from my point of view, these are the main things we have to focus on. Notice the last line in particular, we have to be dynamic. And I think over the past month, we've all felt, if not dynamic, certainly dynamically challenged. And I would suggest to you that there'll be a little bit more of that in the future, but I also suggest that we're well positioned to do just that. Some of the untapped potential that we've identified in terms of shared resources are shared services, shared instruments, and shared operational knowledge. And many of those elements Gordon touched upon in his talk. So let me go back and tell you what we've done. A number of years ago, we established the Mid-Atlantic Cancer Center Shared Resource Alliance with the institutions listed up there. And it was based upon providing equal access of all those institutions to one another's shared resources, also at the same rate. And then finally, it was absolutely clear after doing this for a while that the success of this was dependent upon having someone in each of the institutions making sure this sort of collaboration took place. It took us about, excuse me, about a year or two to get it put together. Excuse me, particularly dealing with institutional lawyers and things like that. There was a lot of fear that all the money would disappear and everybody, it'd be chaos. Wasn't the case at all. It turned out to be quite successful. It can be done. So it was established in 2024. We had our first meeting last summer in Baltimore. I think it was a great success. We had 26 cancer centers represented, and we had a variety of outcomes come out of that. So we actually, and George is going to give us one of the best examples of that in just a moment. So the difference being, though, we really focused in on the metrics, data management, and interaction with shared, with CCSG's components, sort of like what Gordon was talking about with SurTech. One of the focuses of that meeting is how do we relate to SurTech, how do we relate to PED, such as it was, and you might, whatever things might come up after that. So we really focused on that with great success. And there it just shows the meeting. Interestingly, we actually had a representative from the NCI there that gave a talk, and she was incredibly enthusiastic with the group and really gave us a lot of encouragement to move forward with it. So current developments, as Gordon just mentioned, we've been in touch with the group out on the West Coast and our group, and although they were pretty much focused on shared resource management, and we were a little bit broader umbrella, meaning all of the cores, clearly there's common ground. Clearly there's enough room for all of us to have efforts involved with this. And so this is where we've come up with this National Alliance of Cancer Center Shared Resources that we're proposing, and we're going to hopefully push forward in some form or fashion very shortly. So with that, our future aims, you can see right up here, we're going to move forward with our group and continue working with Gordon's group to really bring them all together. We do have a meeting scheduled this June, I think it is. It's Sloan Kettering, right? There you have it right there. And I think we'll be able to get a lot more formal work done there with the West Coast folks and really start to chip this into stone. So originally it was going to be focused just on the East Coast, but we're trying to open it up and bring everybody together there as kind of a semi-formal launch or whatever we want to call it. So with that, even though we're working on this merger or alliance or whatever you wish to call it, we've still been working in our East Coast Alliance, and George is going to tell you some of the things his committee's been doing over the past 6 months or 12 months. George?
Thanks, Jay. So I'm really happy to be here. I'd like to start off first by thanking the ABRF meeting organizers for adding this session on Cancer Center Shared Resources. It's obviously a good fit for the ABRF. My role, I'm the Associate Director for Shared Resources at the Sylvester Comprehensive Cancer Center at the University of Miami. And I also have a more university-wide role when it comes to core facilities. I'm going to give an overview of the activities of the fairly recently formed Core Metrics Working Group, also called the Core Metrics Committee, of the National Alliance of Cancer Center Shared Resources. The group is composed of 16 members from 14 cancer centers that span the East Coast, the Midwest, and the West Coast. 14 members of this group have the role of Associate Director for Shared Resources at their cancer centers. I'm the chair of this committee, and Agnes Vial, who's in the audience, who's from Sloan Kettering in New York City, is the co-chair. The group's first-year goals are to create and send a survey to Cancer Center Shared Resource Management leaders asking about their array of shared resources and services, staffing and institutional support, and the core metrics they track. Identify and share best practices for reporting shared resource core metrics for the NCI P30 Cancer Center Support Grant, also known as the CCSG. Create a repository of optimal templates for shared resource management and shared resource sections of the CCSG. establish a Cancer Center Regional Shared Resources MOU template repository, similar to the Mid-Atlantic Association that Nick and Jay mentioned, essentially to facilitate the establishment of Cancer Center Regional Shared Resources. Organize Cancer Center core metrics sessions at professional meetings, exactly as we're doing at this ABRF meeting, and send recommendations to the NCI regarding the required core metrics in the shared resource and shared resource management sections of the CCSG. For example, recommend that the NCI include shared resource use by members from other cancer centers as a metric in CCSG reviews of shared resources and shared resource management. Shared resource management in cancer centers involve metric tracking that facilitates comprehensive supervision and support for the shared resources, including oversight of operations, personnel, capital equipment, financials, compliance, and importantly, tracking impact metrics, including metrics on publications, new grant awards, and clinical research studies supported by the shared resources. We will open a survey on Cancer Center shared resources metrics in just a couple of weeks from now. A link to this core metric survey will be sent to the associate directors for shared resources or their equivalents at cancer centers across the United States. The results from the survey will provide a baseline for shared resources metrics across cancer centers and will form a foundation for best practices for shared resources metrics tracking and reporting. Results will be shared at the National Alliance of Cancer Center Shared Resources annual meeting in June, and we also plan on publishing the results. Thank you for your attention. All the speakers at this session are happy to take questions. I'll pass the mic back to Nick, who will moderate the discussion. Thanks.
So I would like to add a few comments to what my colleagues have said. First and foremost, what I'd like to do is to thank ABRF for hosting us, not just here at the meeting, but Ken has set up a community for cancer-focused shared resources. So this will be a way for us now to be able to communicate very easily amongst each other. We'll be able to share documents with each other. As George had pointed out, there's trying to pull together some examples of templates and things like that. All of this can be posted to the community. And so for those of you who I believe are on our current mailing list, which is over 100, you should have gotten an email from ABRF inviting you to join this community. If you are not on our original mailing list, come talk to any one of us. We'll make sure or talk to someone from ABRF. They'll point you how to just join. So that's one thing that I wanted to point out first. The other thing that I had wanted to point out as well was the opportunities for us bringing all of this together is really, I think, a unique thing. For those of you who are involved in cancer centers, you know probably that all the center directors meet annually. All the associate directors for administration, there's, I think, 2 different meetings that they can attend, if not both, 1 or 2. So having something for all the shared resources is really an important component. After all, this used to be called the core grant. And that's where the majority of the funding has gone. Now, as Jay pointed out, life is in flux right now, so who knows what things are going to look like. But I don't think the shared resources are going to go anywhere. It's going to be an important component, forever moving forward. So this is why I think this group is really important and can have a huge impact. The other thing that we also took the approach on setting up the East Coast Alliance was not only to have our shared resource folks here, but but there's also a number of cancer center administrators who are members of this. That's a group we have to work with hand in hand. So again, we're looking to bring all these synergies together. So this is one way of bringing some synergy to the shared resources and administration and ABRF. There's a lot that ABRF has to offer us. We've had a strong administrative group here for many years, so we don't have to be reinventing the wheel, but we can look to their experience and how we can move forward with metrics and things like that. So those are the couple comments I wanted to make. The last call we had, one of the things that I had asked people to do was to start thinking about two things. So you saw in both Gordon and Jay's talks some of the points that people were interested in looking at. There's a lot of overlap. So moving forward to create some working groups or committees that can really start to address some of these, I think that this is the perfect time to start putting on paper what are those key issues we want to focus on and create a committee or working group to address that and get some members to join that and push that forward, just as George has done with the metrics group. And we can even expand his membership now beyond the 14 ADs from the East Coast and West Coast and Central, but to get more representation. The second thing that I had brought up, and this is Jay's idea, I believe, and he wasn't on the call to talk about it, but the cancer center administrators are working together to try to make some suggestions on changes to the next guidelines for the CCSG. This is a great opportunity for us to look at the guidelines as they pertain to shared resources and make some meaningful suggestions on how they can be modified. So I do think that we should create a small group of people to look at this, get feedback somehow, and make some formal recommendations, and we can do that probably through the administrators group. So with that, I'm just going to open it up. We really wanted to save most of the time for discussion. You know, I guess you'll monitor if people have questions on the who are joining us by Zoom. So consider it opened up.
If you have questions, please use the microphone in the aisle.
So I guess the first question that I'll throw out there is, what are those topics that people feel are most important that they'd like to see us try to create a working group around?
Hi, Kim Zelke, University of Michigan Roble Cancer Center. I have more of a comment just to start out with. 3 pages for biostatistics and bioinformatics shared resources is not enough. So if we're going to make recommendations back to the NCI, I would love to hear from this group on their, 6 pages, what do we think should be included? Should we pull them out from shared resources? That's what I would love to hear. So.
Well, let me actually address that, and I think your point is very well taken, because as the CCSG has evolved and our cancer centers have evolved, biostatistics has become this larger thing. There's biostatistics, there's bioinformatics, there's computational biology, there's data science, there's informatics. And I don't know if he's on, but I had invited Suren Nadaf to join us. He runs the Cancer Informatics Society, and they're comprised primarily of people who are running informatics shared resources within cancer centers. And again, there's another opportunity for synergy. But maybe this is an opportunity for suggesting a change to the guidelines, that maybe this is a bigger section than what we've been doing. So
And I'll just add to that, there's no doubt that 3 pages is a challenge. You know, I mean, one of the ways we tried to address that challenge is move as much as we could to the shared resource management section in terms of, you know, relationships with CERTEC and educational impact and other factors. And so that helped, and it also helped the shared resource management section show a more universal picture for all the shared resources. But I agree, that would be maybe, you know, the very first recommendation we might give.
To that, so we did something similar, and we got critiques in our SRM that were more things that should have been handled in our cancer data science shared resource here. So that was kind of the burn that we got, a little bit of scrutiny on how our operations are working that may have been core operations rather than SRM.
I know, and one of the things, even though we said it in the individual shared resource section, we didn't give the results of user satisfaction surveys in the individual sections. We gave an overview in the shared resource management section, and some people didn't notice that. Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the very few things we got dinged on, but unfortunately, you know, the lessons learned. Yes.
Thank you. Heather Jensen-Smith from the Fred and Pamela Buffett Cancer Center at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I just wanted to start by saying thank you and applauding the efforts of this group. This is really important. I'm particularly excited to see that we're working to flesh out some of the metrics that we're using to collaborate and evaluate our success. I actually just submitted a preliminary portion for our CCSG yesterday, so I'm in this space. One of the things that I'm wondering is, there's the game to be played, for lack of a better way to say it, in preparing the CCSG. But there's another aspect of this is, what are we doing to establish viable business plans and logistics that work their way down to the individuals that are overseeing these shared resources? So I guess my comment question is, could there be additional working groups that make sure that the overarching structures that we're talking about today can actually be effectively applied downstream, with the overarching goal is to make sure we have exceptional research and outcomes for our cancer center groups?
No, I think you're spot on. And this is really, you know, one of the reasons we've set this up. You know, it's not just for the management level, it's not for the director, it's really boiling it all the way down. So how does every write-up come back as exceptional? You know, we need to make sure that all of the elements are in place, and we've got the expertise here to be able to make that happen. So I think that this is really the ultimate goal of what this group wants to accomplish.
I'll add on to that. Creating professional multi-year business and operational plans is actually a current focus in my group. I actually have the business manager for my shared resource management team is in the audience, Alejandro Salas. You know, basically in this uncertain funding time, it's really important to justify the cost recovery and to, you know, firmly communicate sustainability. I think it would be great, just even as a matter of core metrics, to have, again, a repository of ideal business plan templates that people use, and to have a baseline of understanding of what cost recoveries are. They differ according to cores and the developmental stage of the core and such, and I think we all understand that, but need to clearly communicate that, but also to understand for cancer centers why we're not making profits, which of course we're not allowed to, and then the business people ask us why not, but also basically, you know, what is a acceptable standard for cost recovery for different types of shared resources and for groups of shared resources as a whole. I'd love to work with folks to establish that. As I said, that's a major focus at my institution right now.
And I think that was one of the items in common in both of our lists were
Yes.
budgeting. So it's clearly an important thing. And that's one of the advantages of having the cancer center administrators to be part of this.
Hi, I'm Malishri Joshi from University of Colorado's Cancer Center. So this is a great effort, and thank you guys for doing this. My question is the Alliance trying to standardize metrics across the cancer centers, or does it also plan to advocate for more resources for shared resources?
So it's a great question. I think as far as metrics go, I don't know that it's necessarily one size fits all, but you'll have an idea of some of the metrics that other centers are using, and you might be able to identify those that might paint a better picture for your cancer center. So we may not include everything in terms of metrics, but what's most important to us. As for the resources, wish we had a crystal ball with what's going on in DC.
True. I do have one more question. So with the Alliance, I think Jay mentioned that they were an alliance of 5 campuses on East Coast, and the prices for services were similar for members of the alliances. Are you concerned about cores competing for the same kind of services, or like?
No. In fact, we were emphatic about the fact that this alliance isn't to be used to try to get better pricing. So that's why you have to have someone monitoring this. Jay, do you want to say some more?
So, first of all, in the context of the National Alliance, we're not advocating per se this sort of business plan where we share resources. By virtue of having the network, you can reach out to your neighbors and do that using the East Coast as a model. Any institution, unless you're right across the street from one another, they're likely to have their own shop. But nevertheless, there are a lot of great opportunities for these sort of relationships to go forward. So I think as the budgets may get somewhat constrained, there may be value in saying, well, we're going to do our sequencing across the street there, and we're going to do the imaging here. I don't know, but I would suggest that's the type of thinking one should have in the back of their minds.
Thank you.
I'd like to add on to that. Oh, no, go ahead, Gordon.
I was going to say, similarly to that thinking, I think we also, unfortunately, as we talked about the potential for contraction, move into the opportunity to really understand what cores one another offer and where we have unique components that I think could become of value for folks. So again, I mean, I use electron microscopy and cryo-EM as who knows what's going to go on with our national centers, and those of us who are able to have those and have capacity and share, it's something that we could be talking about. But I think that's really one of the hopes here, is that we are understanding where our value adds are from an institutional to institutional basis without, I mean, there's no need for us to compete. There's plenty of that already out there.
Before you ask your question, I know there's questions from online. Let's go to an online question. We'll come back.
So I just wanted to add on to this particular one, because it's really important to me, the regional shared resources. Steve Medore, who's in line to ask questions at the University of Florida, he and I are among the cohorts in Florida that have been we're working to create essentially a memorandum of understanding between the academic cancer centers in Florida so that we could share our shared resources, essentially with expedited access to external cancer center members at or near our internal pricing. It made sense. For example, at my institution, we have the only CyTOF in Florida. It doesn't make sense that other cancer centers would need to buy their own. Using the example of Nick and Jay's Mid-Atlantic Alliance, there's also the Chicago Biomedical Consortium. There are many other good examples of these types of alliances working. We wanted to move forward in Florida, and now really nationally among cancer centers to see what makes sense in terms of sharing resources, not so as, somebody mentioned, so our members could shop for a more competitive price, but really to be sure that we have an access to all the shared resources in the most efficient way possible. And one of the lowest hanging fruits on that is to have a list of what all the shared resources are in all the cancer centers. There have been some attempts at that. None of them are comprehensive and up to date. And we're hoping that this alliance will actually facilitate that type of searchable directory of shared resources and services at all cancer centers.
So the one question we have from the online audience that I think has been alluded to is there a place that we can improve communication and collaboration between all shared resources to share common obstacles, how others are supporting the management of shared resources, tracking of shared resources, etc.? Community maybe.
Yeah, this is one of the reasons that we're working with ABRF as partners, because we will have an online community where we'll be able to do exactly what you're asking for.
Great panel, thank you. Mike Bertram, O'Neill Comprehensive Cancer Center at UAB. Full disclosure, I am an AD for administration, so was at the CCAF. Also to commiserate a little, I've done 3 renewals. All 3 times the core facility section was completely different each and every time. I was one of the lucky ones that got to group them. That was my mid thing, and apparently probably this winter/fall there was going to be another set of SRM guidelines. One comment, consider, I don't think we're going to go away from the SRM model. It doesn't seem like it, but the page limits could increase. And attachments are our friends. If we can get attachments added with metrics that this group comes up with, I think would be an ideal situation. Now my question is more about the consortium or alliances. So at UAB, the Cancer Center supported cores are also institutionally supported. So the question is how do you, for those of you that are in a similar situation, work with your institution to agree to give rates that they're subsidizing or close to outside users?
So I'll take the first stab at that, or Jay if you want to, but so for our Mid-Atlantic Consortium, all of our institutions agreed not to even consider indirect cost recovery or surcharges or anything like that. The concept behind it was simple. It's a sharing of the need to use other resources and that it would equal out. And I think that's really what it has done. And, one of the things that I had encouraged the NCI representative when she was at our meeting back in May last year is what can NCI do to encourage institutions to be able to just hand wave all that stuff to just make it happen. And I think that's where we need to look, is for NCI to actually just mandate something.
Yeah, I think a lot of, as I alluded to earlier, a lot of the administrators were very nervous to hear that money rushing out the door or whatever. And the truth of the matter is, when you track the commerce, it's not that much. Now, it may be in large cities where you have something right across the street, but in practice, it's not that much. It's occasional, like when you come to your capacity, and in our case, on at least 2 occasions, our instruments dissolved. They were dead, and we had nothing for 6 months. And fortunately, our partners stepped up and took the load for us. Another example of this that hasn't been talked about is whenever one of us has put in a shared instrument request, an S10, if it makes sense, we send in a letter of support, which seems to have a little bit of traction with those study panels.
Sure. Can I ask one follow-up question? In those situations, then, can anyone from the institutions do it, or are it only cancer center members?
That's a great question. So while it was designed around cancer centers, we just have a gentleman's agreement that we're not going to turn you away if you're not cancer center. If you're a neurobiologist, we're still going to do your work.
I'm Steve Medor I'm the Associate Director for Shared Resources at the University of Florida Health Cancer Center in Gainesville. It's great to be here. I think this National Alliance is a tremendous tool, great initiative for everybody here. I want to thank Nick and certainly my friend George, who I've worked closely with. George has done a great job at leading the metrics committee, and I think we're making a lot of headway there. My question, Nick, is to the committee here is, I've been through 2 site reviews. One didn't work out too well, but the last one was very successful for us. We're one of the newer cancer centers. My question is, do we have any insight in terms of how the NCI sets the parameters for the shared resource management review? Many people in this room have probably been site reviewers. And is there some insight there maybe that perhaps can help us set our path forward in terms of what is the NCI, how do they decide what criteria to use to review shared resources? Do we know anything about that process?
Gordon, is this, I know you've reviewed a couple of case examples, and it's a black box.
I was going to say, not sure. It's what is written at the review section of the request for proposals. So no, I don't have any insight into that. Unfortunately, it's something we're looking at.
They do. I mean, there's the guidelines to follow as far as review goes, but the bottom line is, depending who the reviewer is, it's a crapshoot. And this is something I think a lot of us have discussed one-on-one, and that is there's just, the reviews are uneven. And this is something that maybe we can have a little bit of input on, and that's why I think, Jay's idea of trying to come up with some suggestions for changes to the guidelines, and this could be something to try to address.
Right, I'll just give an example in terms of regional shared resources. We just put in, we just recently received very good results for our first submission for redesignation. And when we were doing the process of pulling together our CCSG, we hired great consultants, and I asked them, does it make sense to talk about our efforts for regional shared resources and just the use of our shared resources by members of other cancer centers? And they said no, that's distracting, a waste of time. And I asked other folks at other cancer centers and got similar answers. But then, so I didn't mention it in our submission, and luckily it didn't hurt us. But talking to Nick and to others in this alliance, and to the NCI folks at the last meeting of this alliance, they directly told me, yes, it will help. We will actually give you brownie points and pat your head for doing this type of thing. The guidelines in the CCSG say in the leadership section, you should work with other cancer centers. In the shared resources, in the shared resource management section, it's crickets in terms of that. And so making that clearer and asking the NCI to make that clearer in the guidelines would help clarify and help strengthen all our submissions. So that's just one example.
And in fact, every one of our renewals since we've had our East Coast or Mid-Atlantic Consortium have all really pointed out the value and benefit of this. So, Stuart, and then we'll go back to an online question.
Okay. So I'm Stuart Levine, Koch Institute for Integrative Cancer Research at MIT. So I kind of want to spin this a little bit different direction. This is a very admin-focused, write the grant focused, but there's the part you've been talking about actually sharing information among cores of that, each flavor. How do we marry that more into ABRF? How do we get actual cancer-centered focused sessions, tracks, whatever it is, so that, it's really important, obviously, for the admin piece, but as cancer-related cores, we have things to say to each other. And how can we think about improving this meeting and attracting more cancer center folks, including program officers, to come and so that our cores are better and therefore better aligned at the point we're writing our CCSGs? Stuart,
That's a great question, and I'm really appreciative to ABRF for giving us this session this year. How many years have we been talking about doing something, Ken? But I think part of the strength today is this room is almost full. How many people do we have online? 45 people online, so that's probably close to 100 people, if not more. So that speaks volumes, and I think that will help ABRF maybe think a little bit more about how to expand this down the road. No pressure, Ken.
No, and then we also have the suggestion boards in the hallway for 2026. That's an open forum for you to add this content and these topics. 80% of the content presented at this meeting was member proposed. So please use that as an outlet as well. And together with the 26 program committee, as well as the chapter organizing committees. We're all here at this meeting, and because the chapters have obviously there's multiple venues to present this type of content at those meetings as well.
So Nick, or to Stuart's point, you say, well, what's the difference between a institutional core and a cancer center core or a matrix core? So there's kind of like 3 different flavors. So I think it'd be a worthy discussion, particularly in this venue, to kind of go through, here's what might be the differences, here are where's the fuzzy edges between them, how do we make it work? Because a lot of people, even working in those cores, it may not be clear in their minds. So I think that's a hard topic that could be on paper.
Yeah. So I think I would also add a fourth, if you're a consortium entity that deals with shared resources across 3 institutions.
Right.
That's our big question mark. But I mean, this is, so I'm not going to say more than Ken was just saying, but I think this is really our great opportunity to use these workshops, these working groups to potentially come up with these ideas for ABRF. George and I were kind of chatting beforehand. Where do we get ourselves together best? Again, some of us were in Seattle up at ACCA last weekend. That was fantastic, but there's 35 folks. Down here, again, we're talking about 100, split about 50-50, it looks, between online and there. So where are opportunities to really make sure we get more people here, and how do we do that through ABRF sessions? And I'm looking at Stuart, who's looking a way to sign up to lead one of those workshops. But I mean, that's really, to me, one of the best benefits that we finally have in coming in with ABRF here.
And I'll just give one example, and then we'll go to an online question. But during COVID, ABRF pivoted to these online workshops and things and town halls. There's no reason that we can't do this through ABRF, and maybe every couple of months have another session that's devoted to a different topic. So some of those were extremely well attended, and that's one idea.
Just want to add one more to this, which is just for Stuart. Having cores and cancer centers, similar cores at different cancer centers, have the leaders of those cores meet with each other, I think is a good way of making sure none of the individual leaders reinvent the wheel. And having them do this under the structure of the ABRF with our genomics cores and proteomics cores, research groups and such, I think would be really useful. But also we have an educational committee, and talking about the relationship of cancer center cores and CERTEC, that could be done and facilitated by the educational committee at the ABRF. So there's a lot of different types of possibilities.
So we're having some technical difficulties. So the next question here.
Claudella Lancet, Rogle Cancer Epigenetic and Epigenomic Shared Resource Developing Core. So I don't know if you have specific metrics for developing cores. I would love to know them because I'm quite new to this. I do run an epigenomics core, but this is new to being with cancer, and I really love it. One suggestion, maybe we could do a symposium pre-ABRF. We have some workshops, so that would probably bring people together. And I do think that ABRF is a nice venue because they also see some technology and some other core resources that they're a good thing to share ideas. And the town halls, I think, is a good idea as well. I came because to the microphone because I'm a living example of how a shared resource list would be good for a lot of your investigators. I know a lot of other cores have sunset the methylation array scanner, and they seem to find me through word of mouth that we still have one. So that would help your investigators a bit. And then if you can give us tips to be able to champion how other NCI institutions, maybe through Kim and our cancer center, should not have to pay indirects, because this is very important work, I will be more than happy to use my big mouth to help you guys do that.
Great.
Because I'm a mini steward.
We did have one additional question online. Is there a rule of thumb regarding a role for tenured faculty as shared resource directors, i.e. should they do it, and if so, should their salary effort be taken into account when calculating chargeback rates and revenue?
I mean, so where was our resident administrator? But no, the answer is yes. You know, you're putting effort into it, and all effort related to the core has to be charged to the core. So that's again, that's one of the strengths of ABRF, the administrators group here. You all know that. So this is where you guys can help us with things like that. But absolutely, yes, it should be taken into consideration.
So there's actually a discussion, for the folks that aren't aware of it, ABRF has a core administrator network, and there's an ongoing online discussion exactly about this question about, do you put shared resource management into the cost structure for the individual cores? And there are varying answers to that. I think that it would be good for everybody to join that discussion and to have that, the CAN-CC is what it's called, you know, provide a summary of that. I think that'd be great. I'd also say this relates to whether or not shared resource directors that have academic appointments but have the majority of their percent effort as shared resource directors, they should have a particular academic track or career ladder that, you know, so they get promotions and compensation increases that are related to their roles as core directors, as opposed to the way it's normally looked at for R01 funded investigators. Are you the anchor author? Are you the main PI of a grant? You know, core directors have other criteria to show that they're doing well. And I think we can help advocate for that, both through the Cancer Center Alliance for Shared Resources that we're talking here, as well as to the ABRF for that.
Hi, my name's Ken Grice. I'm from the University of Cincinnati. We're an aspiring NCI Cancer Center, just recently had a first EAB meeting. I wanted to expand a little bit on the concept of sort of what counts. I also have oversight for the research core facilities for our entire College of Medicine, which we're told is, or which I've been told is, you can't do that, and also do it for the Cancer Center. This was a direct line out of our EAB meeting. My question is, how do we get that point across that if we have very efficient centers that are working, that even if they're not 85% cancer center, how come we can't count that into our cancer center designation, our shared resource management? Because we're being told that we can't. And I just don't want to duplicate efforts when we've got functional capabilities and make a whole nother silo for the cancer center.
Yeah, so, you know, many of us, I think, are, you know, from that type of a matrix institution. And so I would argue that, first of all, since you have a dual role, that's a huge benefit to your cancer center. Whoever told you no doesn't know what they're talking about. And as for, you know, how to be able to pull in some of those institutional resources, the easiest thing to do as an up-and-coming cancer center, just send a survey out to your members. Here's a list of all of our core facilities at the institution. Tell me what you're using, and see what percentage of your faculty are using them. Steve, you did something like that in Florida. Yeah, so going in your first time, you don't want to plug it up with 10 different resources. Choose the 3 or 4 that are most important, because after it gets, your designation, then you can start adding on based on what the needs are. So, I mean, that's my thought.
I guess just quick follow-up, my point is, how do we better educate the cancer center directors who are on EABs and others that it is important to have some of those matrix opportunities in there, even when you're a first-time.
So, I'll give you my viewpoint, and so myself and many others, we actually sit on many of these EABs, as a reviewer for the shared resources. And it's someone like myself or Jay or Sheenah who will turn around and say, I really think you need to be doing this. Or they could turn around and argue to whoever told you, no, that dual role is bad. We'd argue, no, that's good.
I find it really highly amusing that they told you that since our center director is also the executive director, executive dean for research in our medical school. And we got kudos in the review from our CCSG for his dual role. And I have obviously a leadership role for the shared resources in our cancer center, but I also have a role in the office of the vice provost for research for university-wide. And again, I think we were, got points for that type of synergy. So, you can convince folks by talking about cost efficiency, again, in this funding environment, and a whole range of things. Sheenah Mische here led a FASB study that talked about the advantages of centralizing shared resources administration and such. So there's a lot of resources that could be used to help convince, and of course, the question is always how to better communicate this to everyone.
Hi, my name is Katia Solchurch. I'm from the University of Virginia. I am an institutional core, AJ, and I'm also a comprehensive cancer core. I have a question about the MOU. The MOU, is that between the cancer centers, or is it between the institution that house the cancer center? And so I have multiple questions. And I love the idea of not having those, sisters sites, not to have to pay the indirect cost to use my core. The institution may not be in agreement with that, so I want to make sure that, it's clarified. And, for example, if my core within the cancer center at the University of Virginia has a technology that is not available anywhere, so we may become a regional center. And yes, with the blessing from the institution and support for from the cancer center, we can just, not give them external pricing. But you mentioned that what happened to the other PIs at that institution with whom we have that MOU? Can you, as a regional center, it would be to my benefit to offer them, access, facilitated access. Is this something that is going to be possible? Again, you need the buy-in from the institution, of course, because they derive the money that sustains the cores for the rest of the work we do, through the indirect. So, if you guys can talk about that. And fantastic session, by the way. Thank you so much.
So, I can tell you about our consortium, and that was, through the centers, through the cancer centers. However, my dean at the time basically said, you've got the green light, let anybody use it who wants to. He was on board with this. So, and that's why I said we've just got this gentleman's agreement that, if I'm sending someone to Jay, it doesn't matter whether they're cancer center or not, because the volume is not great enough to worry about it. So let me finish before you ask, because this might address your question. We do try to keep an update of what those resources are that are available to share. So
just a follow-up then. maybe the Cancer Center gentleman agreement is better than anything else, but we do have in Virginia an MOU, I'm speaking French now, an MOU that should, like if my people want to use, other cores, they should not pay the indirect, but sometimes it doesn't work that way. Sometimes that core will still charge our people, even though we have the Commonwealth MOU, of Virginia MOU. So it's as good as the strength of our MOUs, I think.
Yeah.
Hi. Hi, Annette Jones from the University of Hawaii Cancer Center from the middle of the Pacific. I just had one question regarding metrics. So our director of the Cancer Center requires, I think, us to have publications, listed publications for people that use our core, but it's been very difficult to establish some kind of written agreement when people do publish. Is there any decision to remove that as part of a metric, or find a way to highly encourage our PIs to put us on so that we can find them? Any insight would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, I mean, so that's the $64,000 question. How do you get, people to cite the work that you've done? It's even, more basic than that. How do you get people to respond to the surveys you send out? It's hammering this into them, and it's got to come from your director. And, I was surprised that we use a system, web-based system called Research Logics, and they send out almost weekly reminders about this. And if you've had a publication that they've pulled from PubMed, then they're going to send you an email. Is this your publication? Here's a list of all the shared resources. Which ones did you use? And it's actually done a very good job at keeping track of that for us. Are there any online?
Yeah.
We're still having technical difficulties, so we take
Okay.
There was one other comment that I'll get to if we
Okay.
Heather Jensen-Smith, Fred and Pamela Buffett Cancer Center, just a comment. So we have the same problem, and it's a carrot or stick strategy here, right? Maybe a little of both. One of the things that we have found it's helpful, if you don't have an RRID, it's a starting set point, because the core marketplace will at least tell you when your RRID shows up. My question, comment for the group, a couple here. My understanding is an RRID only identifies you as a shared resource, but that doesn't actually achieve the end goal, which is to see that the CCSG grant number is linked together with a peer review publication in PubMed. So we have a combined acknowledgement statement, and we also send out reports regularly where I'll call people out. Only 17% of the people in the Cancer Center actually cited the Cancer Center. Here's how you do it. And if you didn't do it, here's how you can retroactively add the Comprehensive Cancer Center grant to your publication in PubMed.
Yes.
Right.
Yep.
Yep.
I have the same problem with my S10.
Right. Yeah, we similar to you, we have the guidelines on our website, and we are actually making all our PIs sign an annual statement, not just about this, but by other measures that they need to be good cancer center members. Obviously quote the P30 in your publication, that would minimum, but also the name of the core, the RR, the Research Resource ID, which is extremely important because it makes data mining in PubMed much more simple, as well as any grant that's was used to buy any equipment in the core. But most importantly is that we've had our center director agree that if there is a pattern, and we are tracking by every single member, who's doing this and how often they fail, because we review all the publications and say, I had a recent publication where the Genomics Corps leader actually wrote sections of the publication. Not only was the Corps not mentioned, the grant was not mentioned, but he's not a co-author. So we have guidelines for this. And if they don't follow these guidelines and we show a pattern, they will lose their cancer center membership. That's what our center director has said. Yes, because that is a responsibility of being a member.
Yeah. So we are.
I was going to say, this is a topic that is of unbelievable excitement for many folks, but I think this is just to call out a couple of folks who really do this well. I think UNC and Northwestern are starting to develop out AI algorithms and other components whereby they can track this data in a beautiful way. And I think this is something that I would look to this group, because that's obviously not inexpensive to do, but if it's something that becomes worthwhile to all of us, are there opportunities that we can help fund these groups that are starting to really do this very well? I mean, we struggle with it. Our directors are responsible for identifying everything that gets harvested by our internal system. But again, having recently seen 2 systems that just blow ours away, makes me very excited about the potential that as a group, can we lean into that more and really look at this?
So we are just about out of time. Last question.
Yes, so it's more 3 comments. First of all, our annual meeting is coming up June 9th and 10th at MSK in New York. The idea of making it next year before the ABRF is great, but for this year, it will be in New York. Please respond before April 15th, because we have some logistical room issue depending on how many people are planning to attend. The second is about the removing IDC across institutions. That is only going to work if institutions have similar IDC. I'm not in favor of the 15% across the board, but I'm assuming that us in New York City have a much higher IDC than everybody else, so that's something we're going to have to overcome. Or geographically, we're just going to become regional or, city places. And the third is this forum has given me really a community, and I've several times asked for help to the colleagues here, and they've been very helpful in sharing documents and things that have helped me. So don't hesitate. This is really, this is great.
And I think that, being now part of the ABRF with the community there will even help, communicate among us. Did you ever get that? No. So I want to thank everybody for coming. This has been a great turnout. And we'll arrange for a call very soon, because we really didn't accomplish some of what we wanted to do. But these are really great questions, and it was more important. And I think you can see really the value of this group and how maybe we can be expanding it to even drill down further. And so thank you.
There's enthusiasm out there.
Yes. Hi. Yes, good friend of. Oh, yes. Actually, yes, she actually, I don't know if she was talking about you, but she wanted me to talk to somebody.